All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GR Reads Virtual Film Club event. I'm Sarah Naraki, Director of Wealthy Theater, and tonight I'm joined by a fantastic panel of experts here to discuss everything from movies to music to wilderness survival. This event is a collaboration between Wealthy Theater and the Grand Rapids Public Library. Wealthy Theater is a proud service of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center and a historic venue built in 1911 and still standing in the heart of Grand Rapids. Not only are we collaborating with the library for this live event, but we have also recorded a podcast covering tonight's topics for your listening pleasure. That's available through grpl.org. Tonight's event is made possible by our sponsors, Wood TV 8 and the Grand Rapids Public Library Foundation. The GRPL Foundation supports many aspects of the library, including their wide variety of educational programming for our community. For more information, visit grplfoundation.org. During this discussion and in our podcast, we are talking about wilderness survival and Taika Waititi's 2016 film, Hunt for the Wilderpeople, as part of the library's GR Reads summer program. Now, of course, this being a film discussion, we will be spoiling much of the movie. So if you have not seen it yet, you might want to hop over to Kanopy to screen it first. And by the way, Kanopy is a movie streaming platform which is free with your Grand Rapids Public Library card. All right, now that the spoiler alert is out of the way, let's dive into this discussion. Up first, I'd like to introduce tonight's panelists. So let's just go down the line and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and we'll start there. So Hayes, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take it. Howdy out there, folks. My name's Hayes Griffin. I'm the former station manager at WYCE, one of the departments in the Community Media Center. I'm also a local music educator and musician myself, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Awesome. Thanks, Hayes. Andrew, you go next.
Yeah, hi. I am Andrew Coulon. I'm a librarian at the Grand Rapids Public Library. I work at the Downtown Library, and I work on a lot of technology programs and digital programs like these.
Awesome. Thanks. And Alan, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alan McCarty. I work as a library assistant at the Grand Rapids Public Library right now. And for the last kind of like 8 years, I worked as an adventure educator. Yeah.
All right. And we also have Caleb Dillon, who will be back momentarily. In the meantime, Andrew, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about the GR Reads program, which I know is a little different this summer considering all things. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So GR Reads is a yearly program that we put on. We pick several books, and usually we'll have about 20 or 30 events for adults, programs for adults through the summer. This year, as we all know, things have definitely changed. Most of our programs now are digital, and you can find out more about our programs at grpl.org. We've had to cut back a little bit because of staffing and because of everything that's going on, but we hope that people still enjoy the programs. And I encourage everybody to get a library card. You can still get a library card right now. You can get if you go to the website, you can sign up for a digital library card. And we have curbside pickup, so you can put books on hold, pick them up. We have things like Kanopy, lynda.com, Overdrive, lots of things to use still.
Well, and I'm glad that you guys called us about doing this discussion because we sure love talking about films. And the Community Media Center is all about media literacy too. So that's why we're partnering for this, to analyze the movie as well as the book, get into the music, all that good stuff. So this is not new programming to us. This is actually part of Cinema Lab, which is a program that Caleb and I run, where when we could have people here, we would watch the movie and then talk about it afterwards. So Caleb, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Caleb Dillon. I'm the front of house manager at Wealthy Theater. I'm a massive film enthusiast, and I'll be the source of most of your technical difficulties tonight.
Gotta love the internet, right? Okay, so now we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things tonight, but the main focus, again, is Taika Waititi's film, Hunt for the Wilderpeople. So I thought it might be good if we set the stage by watching the trailer first. So let's go ahead and cue that up.
Ricky Baker.
He is a bad egg, a youth court regular. We're hoping that this change of scene will help straighten him out.
You hungry? That's a silly question, isn't it? Look at you. Ricky Baker, now you are 13 years old. You are a teenager and you're as good as gold. Ricky, this is Heck. You can call him Uncle if you like.
No, I can't.
Lola told me to tell you that you should give me something to do. Is there anything you want me to do?
Yeah. Leave me alone.
Cool. You ever been up in that jungle before?
There's about 1 million hectares of it, buddy. It's easy to get lost.
You lost?
Oh.
I'm amazed how lost you got. You little bastard! We got no choice but to camp out here for a few weeks.
Where are you, Ricky Baker?
More on this massive national manhunt.
Faulkner is Caucasian. Well, they got that wrong because you're obviously white.
You're going to jail, you pervert.
What you call me?
Yeah, pervert.
Back up, homies, and let go of my uncle! So what do we do now?
We run. No. No, we don't need to run.
Huh? Oh yeah, let's just fast walk.
Gonna be rough. No huts, no tents, real bush life. And if you play up, I'll dump you.
Okay, Uncle.
I'd still prefer if you don't call me uncle.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
What's the fastest way out of here?
Jetpack! Do you actually have a jetpack?
No? What? We're offering $10,000 to anyone who can capture them, dead or alive. Alive. They should be alive.
Crumpy!
Oh, mate, she's a bit bumpy around here.
Love you, Ricky.
Ricky!
Didn't they ask who did this? Tell them it was the Wilderpeople.
The what of people?
I'll never stop running.
Yeah, and I'll never stop chasing you. I'm relentless. I'm like the Terminator.
I'm more like Terminator than you.
I said it first, you're more like Sarah Connor. In the first movie, too, before she could do chin-ups.
Excellent.
Uh-oh.
May have lost Sarah.
Well, hey, I'll say it. What a trailer.
Yeah, there we go.
Trailer.
There she is.
I was so excited by the trailer, it just killed my internet. So
Like jaw dropping.
I know, right? The internet was excited by that movie. So again, for those of you watching, you can stream this movie for free on Kanopy, and that's Kanopy with a K, as you can see in the little banner below here. And you can access that for free with your library card. So make sure you do that. So let's dive right into the discussion. So again, we're talking about not only this movie, but this concept of wilderness survival. So my question for the panel to kick it off is around this idea of this wilderness survival trope, like a cliche for a story, right? What does it mean? What purpose does it serve? And, you know, let's get into like, what are the lessons that are often learned? What's your takeaway from wilderness survival stories?
I'll start off. I think especially in this movie, we're dealing with two main characters who sort of have to get lost in order to find themselves. Both Ricky and Heck are sort of not sure who they want to be. They both got kind of armor up against the world and against anyone else, and I think it takes them sort of getting out into the wilderness and away from society to, realize who they want to be and also, what kind of people they do want to let in eventually, as both of them do. Spoiler alert.
What else do we think? And Andrew, I know you're kind of coming at this with a little background on the book that's also kind of covered here, The River. So what's your takeaway about wilderness survival and how that plays into the story?
I think it's really interesting, especially since we live in a very digital, kind of a sheltered life society now, that when people are challenged to go out into the wilderness, whether they want to or not, sometimes that experience is thrust upon us, kind of like with Ricky here. He didn't have much choice. but he found himself in the wilderness, and he had to adapt, and he had to survive. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, it could happen to anybody, and it's exciting and maybe a little hard to imagine, but it's fun to think about. Maybe how would we adapt, or how would we respond in those situations?
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of growth in these stories, right? So it forces you to, bond, whether that's with the person that you're kind of stranded with, or, bonding with yourself, learning to love yourself and understand yourself more. And there's a sense of growth, which we definitely pick up on in this story. So yeah, and then the other thing too is, so there's wilderness survival, and then something very similar is like the deserted island, the Castaway style trope, which I feel like there's a little bit of that kind of in this movie. But what do you guys think about it? Do you think that there's more? Is it leaning more towards the Castaway style of storytelling, or is it more the wilderness survival?
Well, they definitely choose to escape into the wilderness as opposed to being stranded there by some accident or something. I was thinking about this when I was rewatching, actually, that Heck has all these great coping strategies for real world survival, but Ricky has his own coping strategies that Heck could never tune into. And I was thinking specifically of when he's apparently made his own Walkman out of like leaves and sticks and stuff that he's like pretending to be listening to, which is funny. It's played as a joke, but that's as much like a psychological coping strategy for him as anything, real life and concrete that Heck is bringing to it. So it sort of reminded me of someone possibly being stranded, on a deserted island. So, it plays a little bit with both of those, I guess.
Yeah,
I would tend to agree with that. The characters in this film are extremely interesting to me. As they come to the plot as castaways, right? Heck and Ricky, and I think that's kind of what you were getting at a little bit there, Caleb. Right? Like they have both had maybe experiences in their lives that they didn't choose. You know what I mean? They did choose to run away in the latter part of the film to escape into the wilderness, right? But they didn't choose, like Heck didn't choose his troubled past, you know what I mean? Ricky didn't choose to be up for adoption and all those kind of things. So I think there is some kind of element of both of those tropes in this film in that way. But I'm a music guy, so I have no idea.
You're thinking how I'm thinking. That was my thought exactly too, is that, yeah, even though the bigger part of the journey for them is voluntarily going into the wilderness, you certainly have this sense of, involuntarily being thrown into a situation, which is definitely Ricky's story. But I mean, I guess you could kind of argue it for Heck as well, right? He's reluctant to be part of this relationship, and he's just kind of forced into it. Andrew or Alan, any other thoughts on that?
I agree that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
That, I think I would agree with that Castaway versus the wilderness. Those kind of thematic elements of, if you're going into the wilderness, I've always seen it as something to go and confront, or something that you're trying to like integrate and challenge yourself with. So like pursue of furthering yourself by testing yourself, rather than that Castaway thing, like kind of being mentioned, where you're not really like choosing any of that. So it's more about adaptability and surviving. So I would say that I definitely see elements of both, but I think that it's definitely more choice driven, definitely by Ricky. Heck.
Andrew, what do you think about it?
Oh yeah, I think especially with Ricky's character, but to some extent with Heck too. I mean, they're both kind of alienated from society going into the movie. So I mean, in some sense, even when Ricky was living in the city, he was still kind of a castaway because he was moved from foster home to foster home, and Heck was a kind of a castaway because he had spent time in jail and had kind of dropped off the grid. But by going into the wilderness, they make a choice to live a different life. and eventually, society catches up with them, and they have to reconcile their choices. But yeah, I don't want to give too much of the ending away. But
Well, we've got the spoiler alert at the beginning of this.
That's
So
true.
Don't worry,
That's
go
true.
ahead and spoil away. Well, I'm glad that we've got this shot here. I wanted to get into kind of segueing from this wilderness survival and Castaway into more of the narrative structure of it. So taking a little trip down memory lane to our English classes, probably in high school, right, where we learn basic story structure like man versus nature, man versus self. What do you guys think is the structure of this story, or is it more than one of those?
I think it's a lot of man versus self, actually, even more than nature. Before I'd seen this, I kind of assumed that there was going to be more obstacles in their way as far as their environment, but really, other than Heck's accident, which sort of strands them in a certain spot for a while, it's not so much these two characters versus adverse conditions as much as it is the condition is them being able to get along together and let the other person in a little bit and work together. So I don't know if that's really more of a man versus self or man versus man or a little bit of both. Nature's just sort of there to bring them together in a weird way.
Yeah, nature, I mean, to me, it kind of seems like nature almost becomes a sanctuary for these characters. It's their safety spot when they're running from the government and child protective services. But we definitely get a clear sense that this setting, this nature, is a character in and of itself that you've got to be careful with. So like in this shot, I know it's really hard to see here, but this is from towards the beginning of the film when Bella is taking Ricky for the first hunt, which is such a great sequence when they get the pig there. But just the framing of this shot, you have the two characters in the center that are just like little dots surrounded by this vast setting. And it's kind of reminiscent of even like Lawrence of Arabia, the classic wide shot there where it's, he's in the middle of the desert. And so you get an idea of the scope of this landscape. And if we think about the way that this movie opens, I think we've got a shot here too of the opening sequence, which is an aerial shot. And so that's, again, establishing the setting that we're getting into, and you get to see like how expansive the bush is, right? It's not just the woods that are in the backyard. It's mountain ranges, it's really thick forest, everything like that. And I gotta say, this made me think of The Shining. I know this is more of a kid-friendly film, but I mean, if you guys remember The Shining, we had that whole opening sequence is just aerial shots of the car driving up the mountain, and of course the ominous music going on too. But it's establishing that man versus nature is an element of the story. Any other thoughts on that with the story structure there?
Well, yeah, like with The Shining, like you're saying, it starts you out in the mindset that if anything goes wrong or if these people need help or anything, it's going to be days away. It's not right around the corner. So it immediately raises the stakes in both cases. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point too, is that The Shining is following the car and the winding roads going up the mountains. But with Hunt for the Wilderpeople, it's an aerial shot that's kind of going up and over the mountains. And then we land at their house, and then we quickly realize that they're not unfamiliar to the woods around them, to the bush, that they respect it, they know it, they hunt it, right? So another aspect of wilderness survival is kind of this concept of rescue as a theme. So how does the concept of rescue fit into Ricky's character arc? And we can even get into Heck as well. How does rescue kind of play out in this story?
I think the rescue is really interesting because I don't know the character's name, but the woman who is kind of in charge of the child protective services, she does not inspire confidence.
Paula, is that right?
Yeah,
all
Many
in.
of her, many
Oh,
of
yeah.
her scenes are they're played to be funny. You know, she's her a very good comedic actor, but still, you're kind of thinking, like, if Ricky gets rescued by this person, is his life going to be better? It doesn't seem like it.
Right.
So, you know, you're kind of torn. You know, what does rescue look like for Ricky? I don't know.
Well, and as opposed to someone trying to escape something, I think that Ricky, his ultimate rescue is finding someone that he can stay with. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely a plot point that comes out that he's been shuffled around from one home to another, you know, one family to another that couldn't deal with them. So for him, rescue would be more of a homecoming, finding a new home with someone that understands him, that's a little bit outside of the norm and sort of on the fringe, like Heck, you know, as opposed to getting away from something. It's more like finding the thing that he wants to get closer to.
I'm glad
I'd
that you.
agree.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that, yeah, I see Ricky is kind of like seeking a rescue, but in that sense of finding that fulfilled sense of place, which I think he found with Heck, of all places, which is that first comfortable and safe place rather than being treated as that issue, as you saw through the whole beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have in my notes I really want to talk about the inciting incident and the central question of the story. So if we're getting into like the script structure, the inciting incident, if you kind of break down a script into an equation of sorts, it's usually around the 10-minute mark of the story that we have something that happens that kind of tips us off to what the story is really about. Like, what's the theme of the story? What's kind of the goal of the story? And so around 10 minutes in this film, that's when Ricky and Heck have the encounter that Heck says, "Leave me alone." And then Ricky goes back to his room and he hugs the hot water bottle, and you have that kind of like nursery-esque score going on. So we start to understand that what he's really after is a sense of belonging. Even though he's constantly trying to run away, he's looking for that kind of connection. And that's really solidified. And again, I'll just go ahead and say spoiler alert for anyone who's watching. When we get to the central question, which typically happens around the 17-minute mark, that's right after Bella dies, right? So we get this idea of Ricky wanting to, you know, find a sense of belonging without Bella. Because right off the get-go, he connects with her so quickly, and they get together, or they get along very well. But we even get a sense that Heck needs to figure out how to survive without Bella. And I have a shot, hopefully we can pull up the picture of right after the funeral sequence that I think really kind of drives this point home. Yeah, here we go. So they're driving in the car, right? Seems like kind of a whatever cutaway sequence that you have the music from the funeral playing over top of this. The two of them are sitting silent, they're driving, and all you're seeing is this shot for, you know, maybe 10, 15 seconds. But what I see is it's a shot of reflections of the trees and the nature around them, and them sitting in silence is this moment of reflection of like, oh boy, we lost our lifeline. We lost Bella. She's the thing that, you know, drives the family, and Heck talks about it later. So this moment of reflection at the central question tells us that that sense of belonging or family or something to that effect is the theme of the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, Heck was immediately after that. I mean, he hits the road. He goes into the bush, and I don't remember exactly what he says, but he basically says, like, I'm going to get lost for a long time. You know, because he can't, for as little as he can swing, like the normal society lifestyle, which is not much, without Bella there, he can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and Alan is here, not only, you know, a film fan as well, but he comes to the table with something that I'll at least say I have no experience with, which is wilderness survival, right? So Alan, can you kind of tell us about, you know, what's the personal journey that people tend to find when they go on I guess you could just say like a camping trip or a hike or something that's more than going to like Yogi Bear Park, down the road. You know what I mean? Like you're going on a trip to kind of get lost in the wilderness. Do you see some parallels going on between what we're talking about with these stories versus what people actually experience?
Yeah, so I think probably like early 2000s, a lot of the trips and things being ran then that I saw were more just to have fun. And today now I see far more implementation of sense of place activities. So there's this really great quote, I can't remember a statement that I don't know who said it or where I read it, but it's just that nature acts as a mirror to the self. And so I really do believe that people go out there now seeking wilderness to just find stuff out about themselves and sit with those thoughts and those feelings that you don't usually get to sit with because of all this stimulation we have in our more modern world. Just in advertising alone, I'm sure we kind of get inundated with things where we can't clear our brains. So I do think now people are moving outside to seek those experiences. Yeah. I don't know. We probably talk about it at pretty length.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you're spot on. I mean, speaking personally, I just went camping, I don't know, a week or so ago, and it's surprisingly refreshing to like leave your phone behind and just get lost in the woods and unfortunately not have any cell service, right? But yeah, kind of finding yourself and getting in tune with nature and looking up for once in your life. Absolutely. Andrew, what about with the book, The River? I haven't personally read it, but I'm just kind of curious. Are you seeing similar themes and lessons learned, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a very different story. I'll start off with that. The River is it's about two friends who are canoeing down a river. They're camping, and there's a kind of a mystery that comes into it. There's a man and a woman who are out there as well, and there's some forest fire or some more danger within the environment and from this other guy that's out there. So there's a bit more danger, probably a bit more of the man versus nature problem we talked about a little bit earlier. It's probably maybe a little bit less reflective, but yeah, it's a very different story. We brought these two together because they're both kind of wilderness survival, but they come at it from a different angle, different types of stories. So. Yeah,
cool.
There's the cover. Yep.
Yeah, there we go. So now I think the extra unique thing about this movie experience is not only do you have the visuals going on, but as well as the audio. And we have Hayes here, whose background is very much in music. And Hayes, I'd like you to kind of talk us through this particular soundtrack, which is really unique, not necessarily what you would assume would happen for, wilderness-based story. But
Definitely.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So some of the things that I noticed about the kind of scoring to the film, for those of you out there that don't know, the people that wrote the music for the film, it's kind of half of kind of a well-known New Zealand band called the Phoenix Foundation. They split off and formed this band called Moniker, which is they strictly write film music and television music and things like that. And they worked with Taika Waititi. This was their third film, I believe, because they did the music for Boy, and then what's the other one called? The Shark.
Is it Man vs. Shark? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Eagle vs. Shark.
Oh,
yeah,
Eagle,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, Man
That's
versus
the other trope.
Yeah, exactly.
Man versus nature, man versus shark.
Man versus
That's our
Shark.
next talk
All
is
that
Jaws,
stuff.
Man vs. Shark. Yes.
I love it. So Waititi had kind of a relationship with these guys, right? And a lot of the other score, like, I mean, you folks have seen Boy. I actually haven't seen Boy. I'm sorry.
You need to watch it.
I know that's what you said last time. But this score is different in that the band really kind of they really make use of what I would call like a classical music device called the leitmotif, where kind of characters in a story will have kind of a melodic motive associated with them. So like a small series of notes. In this film, it's not so much like a small series of notes that's associated with each character or setting, but like sound textures. You know what I mean? So you all know the when Ricky first runs off to the wilderness, right? And he passes out like 20 yards from from the house face down. Like he's going into the bush, and there are all these kind of like tribal sounds playing, you know what I mean? So they use more like earthier sounds, drum music, woodwinds to kind of like evoke imagery of nature, but like to juxtapose that or whatever, when Ricky first pulls up to the house and all that stuff, they're playing like very urban style 80s sounding electronic kind of music. And I think it's neat how they blend those textures to kind of either foreshadow what's going to happen, like if they're going to nature, the sounds will become more natural, but if they're talking about Ricky's past, then they kind of move to this electronic kind of palette, if you will. That was what I really took away from this score, and just thought it was pretty genius that was the way that they decided to integrate the music into the film.
I think the synth score makes a lot of sense for Taika Waititi, especially if you've seen like Boy or, any other stuff. He's a very quirky person and clearly loves like that 80s vibe too. And Caleb has quite a bit of a music background too. Caleb, I'm kind of curious your take on the score. Do you think it worked? Do you think it didn't? Any other input on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it absolutely works. He's absolutely brilliant at mixing different styles within the same movie and them not seeming to be colliding against each other, but just sort of working with the whole texture of everything. Because I mean, there's 60s pop music in this movie. There's the electronic stuff. There's the real kind of more like acoustic, tribal world music vibe. There's just this whole kind of stew, and I've seen that in other things that he's written, directed before too. So he's somebody like Wes Anderson or Tarantino or somebody that just knows how to put all those things together that on paper they shouldn't work, but when you're watching it, it just kind of washes over you and flows with what you're seeing so perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and speaking of the score, and then kind of going back towards the beginning of the conversation with the loose parallel to The Shining of how this movie opens, there's a lot of that intertextuality, like pop culture references, right? There's some in the dialogue where they're referencing other movies and quoting stuff. But I gotta say, there was one part with the score that made me think of another movie, and I'm curious if you guys had the same experience. Towards the end, I think is it when they're at Psycho Sam's place and Ricky is standing outside, and is it Green Sleeves? Is that the song, that like Christmas song that comes on?
Oh yeah.
When the government's rolling up outside. Did anyone else think of any other popular movie?
I noticed that, but I'm gonna punch myself in the face when you say it. But
I'm ignorant, I guess.
Andrew, Alan, did you guys get it?
I remember it, but it didn't ring.
There's pulling deep on this one, folks.
Oh, it's not even that deep, and we're a couple months away from it. Home Alone, right? Yeah. I think that it was a total nod to Home Alone, because as soon as it starts and Ricky realizes that the government's outside, the bad guy's outside, right? It's a nod, I think, to Home Alone of like, all right, now we got to kick it into high gear because the bad guys are coming for me. And so when I heard it, I'm like, oh boy, did they have booby traps set up? Is someone getting a paint can in the face? Like,
yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
that's cool.
Really, really interesting that they threw Green Sleeves in there. But we did have like snow and all that, so we assume that it's kind of the winter Christmassy season, right?
Yeah.
So let's kind of go back to wilderness survival, because I really want to learn more, and I have no experience with this aside from sort of setting up a tent, right? So Heck, when they first kind of get into this like runaway in the bush, and I think it's shortly after Heck falls and like twists his ankle or breaks his foot, whatever happens there, and they start talking about survival. He says his tip for wilderness survival is stay calm, look for water, follow it to high ground so you can see what's going on. Alan, what do you think about that? And do you have any other advice for when we get lost in the woods?
I would say that that's actually pretty good advice. If you do injure yourself, you're definitely looking to get out. right away. Not like them where it's like, let's just keep evading people. Like that's not a good idea ever. If you're injured, which like about 80-something% of injuries in the outdoors in terms of trips are usually ankle related. So that is even pretty like accurate. But I would say that if you say found yourself lost like Ricky did in the beginning, anything like that, you stay where you are. Granted, if it does get to be a duration of time, you do need to find food, water, shelter, water first being the most kind of important thing. I think you can only last at most somewhere around 3 days or so without water. Food, you can go kind of a duration depending on things. Obviously, we don't test to see how long people can go without food. That's not very ethical. I do believe Gandhi went like 21 days. It's one of the longest fasts he did. So, yeah, and he wasn't moving or anything. So if you're moving, you're going to need to eat food every day. Water-wise, it's like a liter, I think, for every hour of activity you're doing. So you definitely need to find water. Yeah, but in terms of just finding that, it's fairly easy, especially given the size of the space that they're in this film. Saying like 1 million hectares, that's roughly like 2.5 million acres. So gosh. That's a lot. I don't think anybody's finding you there. So, yeah.
I was wondering why, like, how it is that they got away for so long. You know, we saw the season change. I'm like, really? Is it that vast? But holy cow, I guess it is.
I think it's like 1 million acres larger than the state of Delaware is overall. So the area that they're in. So I could see that nobody's finding them if they're like the only 2 people moving around. Like, yeah, that'd be a massive undertaking.
So note to all, stay away from the bush unless you're bringing Alan with you, and he'll tell you how to survive.
Maybe. Yeah. There is food though everywhere. Pretty much even like in the Southwest when I would teach courses in Arizona or like New Mexico or something, you're there and you see sand or like cactus everywhere, but there's actually like food and water almost all around you. You just have to know what that is. And so in this film where Heck has that knowledge, it's not unbelievable that they fed themselves probably pretty well that entire time. They're just doing away with those modern comforts that we all really enjoy.
Right. No McDonald's, no microwave. So that actually brings me to a question that we got. What is a good book or maybe some other resources for tips and guidance on foraging or just in general trying to find food when you're in the wilderness? Alan, any recommendations?
So when I've done that kind of stuff, I've learned my foraging tips from local individuals more so than, say, books. Books are a great resource. There's definitely some out there. I can't recall the one that I read in Arizona, unfortunately, that taught me a lot about those things. But what I found is like talking with farmers even, they're going to know a lot about what natural native plants are in each area. And so they might be able to give you a good idea of like what's in your area to go and find. But typically that's something you want to find from somebody, not necessarily you going out with a book and sampling things. That can lead to a lot of issues. Definitely had a few evacs where students decided to eat something and that wasn't the right thing. So yeah, I would say if you're looking to get into foraging, talk to people in your area, not necessarily, going out and trial and erroring it. That might not be the best or smartest.
That's a really good tip because certainly there are a lot of books out there that are those field guides, whether it's for foraging or, you know, just seeing what different plants are. But yeah, sometimes the berries look a lot alike and you don't want to eat the wrong one.
Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry.
Oh, I was going to add real quick that the library does have quite a few books on outdoor survival. And we do have a list on our website from this movie. We've put together several items and we can add to it. So if anyone out there has recommendations, you can put them in the comments. We can add those to our list, but we do have a list on our website if you want to check it out. There's quite a few.
That's awesome. And now kind of a question, I guess we can go around the room here for all of us. Do you guys have a favorite spot, whether it's in Grand Rapids or just in Michigan, because there's a lot of spots in Michigan, but favorite spot to go for a little wilderness escape around here? Hayes, why don't we go with you? I'll put you on the spot.
I have a great kind of like wilderness buddy, the fiddle player in the band that bluegrass band I'm in, Fograss, Jeffrey Niemeyer. If you want a local resource for West Michigan for foraging, talk to Jeffrey Niemeyer. Find him at one of our gigs. He's seriously as good as it gets. But he took me to Salt Lake Bog. Has anyone heard of this place?
Ooh, bog.
Exactly. You haven't.
Love a good bog.
I'm giving you the secrets here. But it's the West Michigan Land Conservation. Or Land Conservancy, excuse me. They have all of these properties that they kind of put parks on and that they're restoring to their natural kind of wetland habitats. But Salt Lake Bog is a really great one, and I love it. So look it up.
Awesome. Andrew, what about you?
Well, I definitely like to go out to Lake Michigan. Muskegon has some nice parks. The Muskegon State Park is really nice up in North Muskegon. Yeah, definitely the lake for me.
Caleb, what about you?
I don't have a whole lot of specific spots in West Michigan. I'm actually still discovering a lot of those, even though I've been here for a number of years. But I don't know. I'm originally from Traverse City, and up there, there's a lot of secret spots that we didn't want you to know about, and I'm going to keep it that way. So go up there and ask a local, and good luck with that. Otherwise, you just got to find them yourself.
Gee, thanks. Okay, so everyone text Caleb later, and he'll tell you the secret spot, but you'll have to decipher the code to find it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll try a
follow him. Just follow him.
All right, and Alan, what about you? Favorite spot?
I'm just a big person for water, kind of why I returned to this state from the West Coast. I'm originally from Harbor Springs, so up there's quite a few more areas to go outside. I would say some of my favorite areas to like do trail running in this state is anywhere on the North Country Trail system. They'll have big swaths that you can kind of run on. I believe that goes all the way from the Dakotas to upstate New York, if you're that adventurous, but don't think anybody's running that. But
go for a light jog,
Yeah.
Well, and I'll have to say, I mean, obviously up north, there's a whole lot of good stuff, but just locally, like Riverside Park is really beautiful, and Blandford Nature Center, and you can walk around there, a lot of good stuff going on, good way to escape, even though it seems like it's in the middle of the city, but you get to kind of get away. Well, let's kind of jump back to the movie. Another question that we have coming through here. Let's go around the table again. What was your favorite part of this movie, The Hunt for the Wilderpeople? Let's go backwards. Alan, you want to go first?
Oh, gosh. There's a lot of good moments in there. I think I just am a big sucker for all those like expansive kind of shots. I like always looking at the big natural scenes and things that they're immersed in. But I do think one of my favorite scenes was that when they were playing the song, and then before that, when Ricky got lost. Just being lost that close to the home is something that most cases of lost people, they are very close to where they came from. So it just made me laugh knowing like that's very accurate. Yeah.
All right, Caleb, what about you?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a specific favorite scene. This was one that it started and I was just completely all in from the very beginning, and I loved it the whole way through. I was thinking after a couple of rewatches, something that I really got out of it was how rare it is these days, at least in my knowledge, to find a good family movie that's not too much one and not too much the other. This, I really think, is a movie that people could watch with little kids in the room and with adults in the room and everybody in between, and everybody's going to get something out of it. It's a little bit, there are some kind of scary moments, and there's some danger, and there's some action and things like that, but it's more on the level of just a real life, sort of situation, as opposed to something you'd see where it's just for kids and the adults are kind of rolling their eyes, or it's a little bit too adult and a little bit too scary for a kid like Ricky's age, for example, or something. But I feel like Waititi is drawing on a huge collection of things that he grew up with, that I grew up with from the 80s, movies that might seem a little bit, today to be like, oh wow, that's in there, okay. But it's because kids are ready for more than often you think that they're ready for. They're ready for a little bit of scariness. They're ready for a little bit of danger and excitement, and shouldn't be quite so sheltered all the time. So I think this movie delivers that from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I agree. I'll jump in and go next.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, I think, was when Ricky meets the young woman on horseback, and he leaves the bush for a little while, and he's separated from Heck, and he kind of gets back into society, and kind of you get a sense of what Ricky might be missing if he was to just run away from civilization with Heck and live out in the wilderness forever. So I really like that. I like that, and you also got a sense from the girl's father that Ricky had become kind of this outlaw, that he kind of idolizes these hip hop guys, and kind of that outlaw lifestyle, and he's kind of achieved that. He didn't know it, but he's become kind of famous in a way. Mm-hmm. So I thought those were quite good. That was a good scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hayes, what about you?
Oh man, there's so many good ones, right? Like, I mean, from discovering the paper plate face kid in the shed after it burnt down, or I just think they deliver the comical moments really well in this movie, like that, and man, like the Heck killing the boar early on in the movie, like all that stuff. I don't know, there was some intense stuff. It was kind of funny, but yeah, the humor really caught me in this one.
It's just such a cute film, and I think I identify with every scene that has Bella in it. Especially what Alan was saying when she's singing that like birthday song for Ricky. I've been compared to Linda Belcher quite a bit because I make a song for everything in my life. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
I love her character. Well, I know we're kind of running out of time here, so let's wind it down and shift over to some recommendations, which Andrew pointed out that we do have a pretty good list going of recommendations for what to read and watch next. But so you can go to grpl.org for the full list of it, but let's just each give one or two things of either what movie to watch next or what book to read next. Andrew, do you want to start?
Yeah. Actually, no. Why don't you guys go ahead? Come back around to me.
I know there's so many things that we put on this list.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of hard to narrow it down.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll go first. I think I know what Caleb might recommend, so I'm not going to say that one. Into the Wild is a really great movie and book, but even something like The Martian is kind of a similar concept of this discovering yourself as well as survival. Although it's not the bush in New Zealand, it is Mars that he's trying to survive on. So equally interesting. That book's by Andy Weir, and is it not a Ridley Scott film, although not nearly as dark as Alien, right? So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Hayes, do you want to go next?
Yeah, there are so many, what I want to say, things at the library that I could recommend. But honestly, if we're talking about like just skill accrual, we're talking about wilderness survival, surviving in this world, right? Sign up for the free lynda.com subscription that the library has. I have learned like web development and all these weird things for my website through it, like all these like real skills that can actually, add to your career, get you a better paying job. Like it's all free through the library. I'm just going to leave you with that one. So yeah, lynda.com, do that.
I love it. Nice. Alan, do you want to go next?
Yeah. There's a book that kind of reminded me of just alternative characters, like father figure wise, and that would be The Tender Bar by J.R. Moringer, I believe is how you say that name. Just that character that grows up in a bar looking for other figures. It's kind of a good read. Movie wise, this kind of reminded me of like something else of like coming of age dynamics and everything else was Lady Bird. There was that kind of had those things going on.
And I believe Lady Bird's on Kanopy as well, is it not?
It is.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yet another one, Kanopy, free, right, with your library card?
Watch it right now.
Yeah. Well, when we're done, this is a really important conversation. Hold your horses. All right. And then Caleb, let's see. What do you got?
Oh, were you gonna let me talk about Boy?
You know it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. After I saw this one, I backtracked to 2010 and Taika Waititi's Boy, which is just one of the best movies that I've seen in the last, I don't know, decade. Talk about like smiling from the first shot to the last shot. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so good. It's so funny. It's so weird. It's so him and his style. And again, everything we've been talking about tonight as far as clashing music styles, somehow working together, great characters, really subversive story elements, and really just surprising developments in a story where you think, oh, okay, so they're setting it up, this character's going to do this, and the rug is pulled out from under you every single time in the best possible way. So I can't say enough about that one.
Yeah.
And I definitely added way too many books to that list that's on the library website. But I was just, as I was watching, I was thinking about all those 80s survival kid classic books, Hatchet and My Side of the Mountain and Island of the Blue Dolphins and things that I read then. And I think any kid could read them now and not even think anything, as far as the era discrepancy or anything. They're just solid classics for a reason. And any of those are available at the library. Those are mine before I go even further, because I have like 25 more, but look at the list.
The crook out here and just like pull them off.
Hold on. Here we go.
But at least they're all really good recommendations. And yeah, Boy, even though it's not wilderness survival, I think the cool thing about that is it gives some insight into, New Zealand culture too. I think you really get a good sense of how things are different then. And it's in the 80s and their appreciation for Western culture. So really, really fantastic film. Andrew, any other ones that you want to suggest?
You mentioned The Shining. The movie was quite good. Last year I read the book, Stephen King book. It's quite a bit different than the movie, but it's a very good read. It was very enjoyable, actually, and very different to see those characters kind of in a different way than you see them in the movie. But I'll go more general here, and I would recommend that you just get a library card. If you go to the library website, you can sign up, and if you don't have a library card already, or if you had a library card in the past and you've lost it, you don't know your number, just go to the website. You can get an e-library card. You'll just fill in a form, send in some of your personal identification. They'll set you up with a new library card number, and you can get started. Another nice thing, actually, we just announced it this summer, but the library, Grand Rapids Public Library, has gone fine free. So we no longer have overdue fines. So that's another benefit, another good reason to go out there and get a library card and read some books, watch some movies, listen to some music, whatever you like.
Love it.
That's fantastic. And speaking as someone who used to rack up an embarrassing amount of fees, I'm so sorry, but I did pay them. But, I'm glad that you guys kind of removed that barrier, because it is tough to go back and you really want to check out books and movies and everything. But yeah, that can be a barrier. So it's amazing that you guys did that. And I think we've all spoken volumes about how awesome the library is. So check it out, grpl.org.
Yep.
Thank you guys for joining us for tonight's film club conversation on Hunt for the Wilderpeople. Now, I know we have almost an hour of content here, but we actually get into a lot of other stuff in the podcast that we recorded for this previously. So be sure to check that out. Again, that is found on the library's website, listed here below, grpl.org. Thank you again to the Public Library, the Library Foundation. For more information there, visit grplfoundation.org. Thank you to Wood TV, another sponsor of tonight's event. If you want to learn more about Wealthy Theater or the Community Media Center, check out our website. We have a multimedia, wide variety of services as well. And tune in next time. We've got, we're talking about Kung Fu and the Wu-Tang Clan coming up at the end of next month. I'm excited for that one.
So. We're stoked.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be just as good. So
that's a good book. The Wu-Tang Clan book we've got on our website.
Yeah.
True crime, hip hop music, everything.
Yeah. And boy, is that discussion Amazing. All over the place. I love it. So again, this is part of the library's GR Reads summer program. Check out all the other stuff they've got going online, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye.